Ladies and gentlemen, I am here at Bob Crane's gravesite in Westwood Memorial Park. Bob Crane was a DJ, an actor, a personality, and a disc jockey. He was also an actor. He played Colonel Robert Hogan, the lead on the series Hogan's Heroes, which aired from 1965 to 1971. In 1975, Bob Crane starred on NBC Network's The Bob Crane Show, which was canceled only after 13 weeks on the air. Bob Crane was found bludgeoned to death in his home apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona, while on tour June 29th, 1978. What I can tell you is Bob Crane lived a personal life that actually got out in the media and the public. He befriended a gentleman by the name of John Henry Carpenter, no relation to the Halloween director, John Carpenter, but John Henry Carpenter was a regional sales agent or manager for Sony Electronic Division. And he would fly into Arizona whenever Bob Crane was there to videotape Bob Crane's sexcapades and sex voyeurs with female groupies. It's speculated that Bob Crane might have been bisexual because they said at one time he might have also had John Henry Carpenter as his lover, but it's unconfirmed. John Henry Carpenter, it's said to believed to have murdered Bob Crane with what looked like a camera tripod, and a electrical cord from the camera was speculated to have been used to strangle Bob Crane. Investigators found Bob Crane dead with a camera electrical cord wrapped around his neck. Bob Crane's murder is unsolved to this day. So we're talking 1978. That's 45 years later. Here in 2023, it's still unsolved. But John Henry Carpenter was said to have been the lead suspect. In the 1990s, Crane's friend John Henry Carpenter was tried for the murder but acquitted, and this case does officially remain unsolved. After having a love affair with Cynthia Lynn on Hogan's Heroes, who played Helga, Bob Crane became romantically involved with Lynn's replacement, Patricia Olson, who played Hilda under the stage name Sigrid Valdis, which she is actually buried next to Bob Crane. Crane and Olson, her real name was Cynthia Lynn Olson. They separated in 1977, which was just a few weeks from their finalization of their divorce, which would have come a couple weeks after Bob Crane had been murdered. Bob Crane also guest starred on Policewoman, Quincy M.E., The Love Boat, and like I said, man, John Henry Carpenter and Bob Crane would get together for voyeurs and sexcapades with female groupies of Bob Crane's. His original burial site, Bob Crane's original burial site, was actually in Oakwood Memorial Park in Chatsworth, but he was later moved here to Westwood Village Memorial in Westwood, California, by Cynthia Ann Olson, who went by the stage name of Sigrid Valdis. And she passed away in 2007. And she's buried beside Bob Crane. I'm at their tombstone right now. And here in Westwood Memorial Park. There was a film produced on Bob Crane's life called Autofocus. I've never seen it. I gotta check that out. I don't know if anybody out there has seen the Autofocus movie. If you have, leave your comments on what your opinion is of Autofocus. Bob Crane's son, Bob Crane Jr., Robert Crane Jr., said that none of Patricia Ann Olson, who went under the name Sigrid Valdis, his children, before she got with Bob Crane, really had much of a relationship with Bob Crane as a father figure. And I don't think Bob Crane Jr.'s really outspoken too much over the years publicly about Bob Crane's murder, but he did write a book a few years ago and addressed the speculation that Patricia Ann Olson, who went by the name Sigrid Valdis, might have been a conspirator in Bob Crane's murder, but he doesn't believe that to be the case. But when Bob Crane passed away, his inheritance, all of his inheritance, went to his wife. Nothing went to his children. In 1992, John Henry Carpenter was tried for the murder of Bob Crane, but acquitted. The police at that time in Scottsdale, Arizona, where Bob Crane was murdered, did not have a homicide division. So they were ill-equipped to handle Bob Crane's murder investigation. But the interesting part to me is that Carpenter, John Henry Carpenter, had a rental car in Scottsdale, Arizona, visiting Bob Crane, and investigators later said they found brain matter and blood in the car they thought belonged to Bob Crane. And they tried to use DNA testing to match the blood and brain matter in the vehicle, but it was inconclusive. But the only male that had been in the car with John Henry Carpenter was Bob Crane. So I just think it's a case of DNA deteriorating over the years to the point where they couldn't use it effectively, because that wasn't tested until the 2000s. By the time it was tested, probably 30 years later, due to the age of the DNA, I don't think it was able to be tested conclusively. But for all intended purposes, Bob Crane's murder is unsolved to this day. And actually, one of his co-stars found his body in his apartment in June 29th, 1978, or thereabouts. I think it was after, probably a few days later. Yeah. Co-star Victoria Ann Barry found his body. So that's interesting as well. So 1978, June 29th, 1978 is when he was suspected to be murdered. The only top suspect of the case was John Henry Carpenter. And to this day, 2023, the only suspect in the case. So that's been 45 years ago. Still unsolved to this day. Patricia Annette Olson was her real name. Sigrid Valdis was her stage name. And she replaced the original actress as Hilda on Hogan's Heroes. Their children together, Bob Crane and Patricia's children together was Robert Scott Crane. Alyssa, Suzanne, and Anne Marie were all from a previous relationship before she got with Bob Crane. So she was born in 1935. She passed in 2007, so she would have been 72 years old. Bob Crane was born in 1928, died in 1978. Wow, he didn't make it quite to 50. He would have been 50 years old the next month. They are inherited together here at a tombstone in Westwood Village, Memorial Park in Westwood Village. Hogan and Hilda together forever. The epitaph on Bob Crane's tombstone says, "The wind blows o'er the plains through the wild wheat that's never reaped. Wild, wild, wild wind, wild wheat." And then the stillness comes and heat of August sun. The faith is parched and dry, but living. The living now must die. Patricia Crane. And wow. Wild, wild wheat, once young, now brown and dry. All signs of life are gone, yet in still earth the roots live on. Its seeds of life are sown. Wind blown far afield. All little ones must fly. Wild wheat will never die. So, very interesting. Always find cold cases interesting because of the simple fact to me that investigators could have done a lot more back when these original cases happened, and for whatever reason they didn't. But I do believe John Henry Carpenter murdered Bob Crane, and if they didn't wait so long to investigate him, I think they could have got a conviction instead of the acquittal that happened in the court. So that Bob Crane Jr. really believes that John Henry Carpenter murdered his father as well. Especially ties to John Henry Carpenter being a regional sales division manager for Sony Electronics. And they said a camera tripod was suspected to be the murder weapon, and an electrical cord from a camera was found around his neck. So to me, clearly, if I was an investigator, I would have said definitely John Henry Carpenter had a direct hand in the murder of Bob Crane. Well, that's all from Westwood Memorial Service, or Westwood Memorial Park in Westwood, California. Rest in peace, Bob Crane, and rest in peace to Ingrid Valdez, aka Patricia Ann Olsen. And we're out. See you guys on the next video. Peace out.